The Acura ZDX is Acura's first all-electric SUV, and we have had a chance to check out a ZDX before and do a full walk around, but that was the top-of-the-line Type S model, whereas this is the A-Spec. So today we get to see a few of the differences between that top model and one of the more affordable variants like this one. And if you ask me, this all-wheel drive A-Spec is the sweet spot. And let's talk about why. Because there's different power numbers, different range figures, and of course different pricing for all the different models. This A-Spec all-wheel drive sits at a perfect spot right in the middle. So at the starting end of what you can get with these ZDXs, you can get a rear-wheel drive model that's going to give you 358 horsepower, 324 pound-feet of torque, and 313 miles of range. That's the least amount of power, although 358 horsepower is not exactly a wheelbarrow. And that's going to get you the most range and the lowest introductory price. And we'll talk about the price a little later. But this all-wheel drive model bumps your power up to 490 horsepower, 437 pound-feet of torque, and the range hit that you take drops you down to 304. So it's only 9 miles less range, but almost 500 horsepower. Which is pretty nice. And if you live in a snowy climate like where we're based in Colorado, obviously the all-wheel drive is going to make all the difference when it comes wintertime and you need some of that snow performance. Now at the very top of the line, you're gonna have the Type S. That's the ZDX that we got to check out before. And that gives you what Acura says is nearly 500 horsepower. That's their quoted figure. For some reason, they don't want to say 500, nearly 500. And in sport mode, that car gets you 544 pound-feet of torque, and you take a range hit down to 278 miles. That's partly because the Type S has 22-inch wheels, whereas these A-Specs have 20-inch wheels. Still a pretty large wheel, and a Michelin tire here. Not a bad-looking wheel. We've got this machined face and gloss black on the rest of it. So that is one of the most noticeable differences that you can see right off the bat if you're looking at an A-Spec next to a Type S. The other difference that you might notice is that the Type S has 6-piston Brembo front brakes. Huge brakes, over 15 inches, I think 15.6. This is going to have a much more standard front brake because you don't have quite as much power, also quite a bit less torque, but still 490 horsepower in this car. And 102 kilowatt hour battery with this. Now let's talk a little bit about charging, because just as important as what your car can do as far as its performance is how you refuel it. And here up front is your charging port. Now you will be able to use a NACS style charger with this car. You'll be able to use even Tesla charging stations as well as a lot of the other big charger brands. And this car can charge up to 190 kilowatts. There we go. Now, Acura is saying that you'll be able to replenish up to 81 miles in 10 minutes. Usually we like to see those 10 to 80% charging figures because that gives you a little bit more information about how this car is going to charge over a longer period of time. But that's the only charging stat that we have right now. And of course, this vehicle is on the Ultium platform. So like some other vehicles we've seen, like the Honda Prologue, it's a GM platform. And you can see that somewhat in the proportions on this car. So something that I find pretty interesting about this vehicle is that its wheelbase is over 120 inches. So this car is almost exactly an inch longer in its wheelbase than a Chevy Tahoe. So it has this very elongated appearance, even though it's a pretty short, it's a low profile vehicle, which gives it, in my mind, actually really good proportions. And then beyond that, you've got a lot of Acura's typical styling that you would expect to see from these cars. From the headlights to the grille, the whole front end, everything looks a lot like what Acura has been doing and been moving toward as far as styling goes. And this is a more luxurious offering than Honda's Prologue, and part of that comes down to the interior. So let's check out that interior. Stepping in, one of the first things that you'll notice are these two screens. So our center screen here is an 11.3 inch screen, and these are good for wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. So that's all good. And then we've got an 11-inch screen here directly in front of the driver. One thing that I do appreciate on this vehicle is that it does actually have a binnacle to shade this screen, so you're not going to get as much glare on it as you would in some other vehicles, because some vehicles are going for more of a floating screen design even for this screen that's right in front of you as the driver, and sometimes you catch glare on it. So I appreciate that they're staying a little old school and they're still having a binnacle up here. And then some other aspects of this interior, especially around here, you can see some of that GM influence, but it's not all bad because we do still have physical buttons here for the climate, which is something that we always appreciate. This helps for you not to have to take your eyes off the road quite as much. And we've got a couple USB-Cs, cup holders, a little spot to put your phone, kind of all the standard stuff that you would expect to see in the interior of any modern car. We've got a large sunroof here, so all of that stuff is good, and the materials are good. The seats are comfortable. I like the contrast that we have with white and black. The subtly different trim here. It's not all black, so there is a little bit that they have going on with this interior that makes it just a bit more interesting than a lot of the sea black interiors that we see on some other vehicles. And one thing that I appreciate a lot, as a huge fan of music, is the Bang & Olufsen audio system that comes standard on every version of this car. It's an 18-speaker system, and B&O, if you're into stereo systems, you know that name because they make awesome audio systems. So this car should rock out pretty great. Now let's check out the seat behind me, because I am relatively average size, I guess you would say. I'm 5'10", so I'm not a huge guy, not the most strenuous test of rear seat room of any of the people at our office, because most of our guys somehow are all over 6 feet. Makes me feel bad, but my headroom is okay. It's not a massive amount of headroom. This car does have a pretty low roof, which is part of what gives it that cool appearance from the outside. But you know, there's going to be some compromise there. But as far as legroom goes, if I'm sitting behind myself, there's no problems there whatsoever. This seat is probably even a little further forward than I would have it if I were actually driving. So figure anyone that's my size or bigger, probably going to have a little less space than this, but that's still not a problem. And then we've got some vents back here, which is always nice to see. Helps your passengers be a lot more comfortable. And of course, some cup holders and an armrest in the middle, like you would expect to see on just about anything else. And all the way at the back of the car, we pop the trunk, we're going to see 28.7 cubic feet of cargo space with the seats up, which is a decent amount. Again, this is not a very tall space because that roof line is pretty low, but it still goes quite a ways because this is a long wheelbase vehicle like we talked about. And if you fold those seats down, you get 62 cubic feet of space. And we got some more speakers back here. And yeah, look at that. Zach behind the camera pointing out that you can fold the seats down that way, which is always nice. And yeah, I would have to go back up there to fold them back up, but still pretty nice that from here you can tumble the seats and give yourself that 62 cubic feet of space. Not quite flat, so if you want a camping rig, this might not be your camping rig, but either way, still a decent amount of space. Extra cubby here, good spot to throw a charger, so that's something that you want to do, you can. Yeah, a little bit of extra space there. And of course, well, this one is not equipped with a hitch, but I do believe you can get up to 3,500 pounds of towing capability. So if you have a small trailer that you want to pull, that's an option on this car, which is also pretty nice. Now we should talk about pricing, and there's actually kind of a little bit to dive into. So luckily, all of these vehicles apply for a $7,500 tax credit. But before you factor in that $7,500 tax credit, pricing on these is going to start at $64,500, and every one of these models is going to have $1,350 worth of destination charge. So $64,500 for the base rear-wheel drive, and like we said, great range, the best range of all of them, and still a decent amount of power. If you go for this all-wheel drive, which like I said, in my mind, kind of the sweet spot, it's going to be an extra $4,000, so $68,500. You get almost 500 horsepower, still over 300 miles of range. That's why I'd say that this is the sweet spot to go for. But if 490 horsepower is not enough for you, and you have to have nearly 500, then that Type S is going to start at $73,500. And it's not just the power bump that this car is going to get you. It's not just the Brembo brakes, and it's not just these 22-inch wheels. You're also going to get air suspension versus coils. These are all multi-link setups. And you're also going to get adaptive dampers, obviously some slightly different styling. So it's more than just the power upgrade that you're going to get with the Type S. So depending on what you want, maybe it's worth it to you. This is really very much a sleeper because from the outside, I don't think that you would guess just how quick this car is going to be once we actually get a chance to drive it. It's 500 horsepower and 544 pound-feet of torque in sport mode is impressive figures no matter what way you spin it. And $73,500, like I said, for this, unless you want to get the summer tires, Continental summer tires instead of these Michelin All Seasons, that's going to cost an extra $1,000. So $74,500 again, plus $1,350 destination. And from all those prices, you can effectively subtract $7,500 for that tax credit. So that's the long spiel about pricing. And let me know in the comments which one of these ZDXs would you pick if you were going to go buy one of these for yourself. Again, for me, it would be this all-wheel drive because you get most of the performance, still get over 300 miles of range, and it saves you quite a bit of money. So let me know in the comments which one you like most. May 2nd, we're going to have the full review that morning coming out, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you in the next video.